to VPG's Virtual Water Cooler Chat podcast, a platform that celebrates the rich tapestry of professional diversity, empowering both women and men. We aim to foster diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, DEIA, for all, while recognizing and championing the achievements of everyone as a central pillar of our journey. In our conversations, we explore a wide spectrum of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, creating a vibrant mosaic that enriches our collective understanding and strengthens our commitment to diversity and empowerment. Kavita Battula joined Medler, Fero, Woodhouse, and Mills, PLLC, as a senior associate. Kavita Battula is a biotech patent attorney who has 20-plus years of experience in top law firms and in-house. She is also a certified Pilates, yoga, and cycle instructor, as well as a certified coach in integrative nutrition. Kavita is dedicated to building community, sharing experiences, overcoming fear, and breaking barriers. She is intensely passionate about health and wellness and is happiest when making whole food, plant-based meals for her friends and family. Kavita's first love is books. She is an avid reader and writer. You'll see her contributions on various blogs and soon on her own website. She is the founder and CEO of PLLC, focused on bringing more love and light into the world.
Hello, Kavita. Thank you so much for coming in and doing our, January release for the VWCC Virtual Water Cooler Chat podcast episode. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I guess what you would see on the resume is I have a BS and a JD, and I spent the first part of my career at two top law firms in DC, then went in-house, and now I am back joining an IP law firm, and I have had quite a journey that I'm very much committed to mentorship in what I would call the second half of my career, and hopefully empowering the next generation of leaders to approach their professional path from a more assured and supportive place.
Use 3 words to describe the essence of you.
Driven, engaged, curious.
Can you elaborate?
Yes. So driven in the sense of a couple different reasons. I've always followed instructions and done what I'm supposed to do to tick all of the boxes. And I started to understand that there's more to that in life. So now when I use the word driven, it's not only maybe someone who is ambitious, but it is someone who is approaching life from a constant place of growth. There's always something new to discover, and it's not necessarily cerebral. We spend a lot of time in our head, those of us that are in the legal profession, right? It's highly analytical, and I think the IP profession is doubly so, right? But if we allow ourselves to tune back into our creative side of us, like when we were kids, there's so much potential for growth that enhances our professional sphere, but also I think makes us feel like more fulfilled human beings. So that's driven. The second one, I believe, was engaged, was the word. I've always been a connector and a collector. I had someone observe to me, you collect the neatest friends. And I've never thought of it that way. I kind of just feel like I've been very lucky to have so many interesting people come across my path. But I very much feel that I do have an ability to connect to people, to tune into them, and to interact with them in a meaningful way. Curious. Yes, I have, and I think that was something that I was always as a child. My mom has a photograph of me climbing into the refrigerator. She's like, whenever I open the refrigerator, you always climbing in, like as if there was something new to discover. And I think, as I went through my schooling, I lost that a little bit, but as an adult, as I kind of reconnect to the world now that school is done, and I'm more established in my career, I feel like my head is down so much. Now I'm looking up and around me. There's so much in the world to discover. I think that's one of the reasons that we're here, because Ashley, you very much are, out and engaged in the community and driven and curious.
I think I do follow the motto of nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually from one of my former, lay professor. He was a Harvard Law graduate. He was very curious, because if it were up to my upbringing, I don't think I would do half of the stuff that I would do.
Amen, sister.
Right? Because it's like, I asked my mom, I say, hey, what do you want to do for the holidays? Do you want me to take you to Enchanted in DC? Oh no, it's at night. I want you to drive at night. I'm like, okay. Do you want me to take you to no, I don't want to have to trouble you on anything. I'm like, but I asked. So I think sometimes with our culture, because you are Indian American.
I am,
And I am Chinese American. So a lot of it, I feel like that people place so much fear in us. Not like that we don't have enough of our own. Right. So now we carry other people's baggage and then trying to break through. And I'm really grateful that I had professors and mentors along the way that basically challenged me to do things differently. Of course, like you said, in the litigation and, when you have a profession that is primarily dominated by certain groups, historically male-oriented. And then, so I'm so glad that there's movement that both men and women are actually part of it, that actually drive diversity, equity, inclusion, and especially for, accessibility, that type of effort. And I'm really, really grateful for that.
I identify with that very deeply. I'm sure many of the viewers do. And yes, there's absolutely that cultural factor that's compounding. I also feel like no matter what, if you're a member of the human race, you're going to have some fear, right? Because it's a survival mechanism from an evolutionary standpoint. You always have to be on guard for a tiger coming to eat you. We don't have those anymore, but our brain is still very much wired for it. Compounded by that, I certainly felt growing up that there were things that girls did and there were things that boys did. And I think as a woman, I had this fear that I took on from my own mother, who was afraid to go out in the world. Just like you said, don't go out after dark and then when you get into the professional sphere, being timid is not going to advance you. I mean, I saw, to be frank, I saw men ascending much more quickly than I did. And I don't blame the institutions. I take responsibility for my unwillingness to stand in my truth and assert my belonging. I just felt like I wasn't good enough, and whatever I got was fine, right? It was always like that, don't rock the boat. Be grateful for what you've got. And so I think that you and I are here to kind of blow the box on the lid of limitations that we've been living in for far too long.
I think one of the keywords that I have been actually realizing, self-awareness is very important for part of our growth journey. I think one of the things that is really, that I've been paying attention is how much self-censoring I was doing.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about yours? Maybe a little bit, share maybe an example, or if you agree.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like I spent my life waiting for permission.
Yes. Approval too.
Well, that too, right? And I honestly, I feel like I've let go of the need for permission. I mean, now that I'm, closer to 50 than, 20. But the need for approval still resonates. And so that's one of the things I'm working on, is letting go of what other people think. It was Wayne Dyer who said, what other people think of you is none of your business. And when I first heard that, I'm like, spoken like a white male. But no, I mean, it's super hard. But we actually have behaviors that result from thoughts and beliefs that are patterned in. And we actually can change that. And as you said, the first step is self-awareness. For me, honestly, I had to have my world there had to be consequences for staying so small and limited. And some of that might have been from a professional standpoint, maybe not getting the project that I wanted, not getting to work with the client, or not getting chosen. Those are all of the things. And, Marianne Williams has this quote that roughly is, our greatest fear isn't that we aren't enough. Our greatest fear is that we are, capable beyond what we can imagine. And so with that capability comes responsibility and accountability. So when you're living so small, the idea of taking that leap is absolutely terrifying. But I had some personal experiences that sort of pushed me out of that net of safety. And I was like, holy smokes, my entire world turned upside down, and I had to rebuild. And I had to rebuild with a different skill set if I was going to navigate this new world. So that's maybe a little bit about what started this whole revolution for me and my commitment to empowering other people to be able to make that shift without feeling like the bottom of the floor is going to collapse on them in order for them to actually reevaluate.
Well, I'm so glad that you went there with Mary Williamson, because that was one of the quotes, about like your greatness, how we actually fear about us being great, and then we play small. Sometimes to just sort of like not rocking the boat. And that is something that I was talking to Dr. Anna Yusum. Mm-hmm. She's a psychiatrist, and she did one of her courses for us.
I took that course. It's fantastic. For anyone that hasn't yet, do it.
Yes, and she actually was so amazing. And I read her book for Fero. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing I did was like, whether she wants to do like a course with me that is live. And then, so we did that. And I'm like, I wonder if she wants to do it on demand. She was like, sure, let's do it. And then she was the one that talked about also how fear is false evidence appearing real.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I've heard not only from her, but there are other people that have talked about that. And in the 4 years that I've been, almost 4 years, January 2nd will be 4 year of BPG. But in the 4 years that I have actually been in this entrepreneurial journey, I just found that there were so many things that happened, and it almost sounded like it's sort of fate for me to meet certain people. Mm-hmm. And I am not someone that is very interested in like having in patent litigation for 20 some years. So when I've actually met other people that are more spiritual oriented, mm-hmm. I was like, I don't want to go woo-woo.
Yes, right. I actually started taking yoga in the winter just to keep warm. And I kind of felt like that level of thinking was so beyond me, and I had very little patience for it. Honestly, when I started doing yoga, I was the person that would leave in Shavasana and be like, I can lay it down at home for free, right? I need to go grocery shopping, right? And 10 years into the practice, I now teach it. And those principles of Gabrielle Bernstein wrote a book called The Universe Has Your Back. And what if we approach the world with the belief that everything is happening for us versus everything that's happening to us? Or the belief that the universe was conspiring in our favor? I mean, those are pretty radical concepts for people that have grown up, honestly, from a very fear-based place. For parents that were immigrants, not having family support, financially things were difficult. So it's very hard to actually think that anything is working in your favor when assimilation is hard, when paying the bills every month is hard.
So I wanted to also congratulate you on your new position.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about that, and also how and what inspired you to pursue a career in patent law, and how did you navigate the challenges associated with that, being a minority woman in the field?
Sure. Well, a wonderful collection of attorneys, Medler, Fero, Woodhouse, and Mills. We sat down and we discussed what a collaboration could look like. They weren't necessarily looking for someone with my skill set, but we had mutual friends, and we all know in this community, it really can be who you know. They really liked my approach to leadership and teamwork, and I really like the fact that they're committed to building teams from a thoughtful place and to really serving clients by giving them time and attention and selectively choosing where their focus areas are. So I'm just super excited to join this group of warm and wonderful and intelligent and committed individuals. As for patent law, I always knew growing up that there were certain professions that were acceptable. From a young age, I showed a gift for writing, and I've been writing for as long as I can remember. But I was told that was not an acceptable career pursuit. It had to be a hard science. So I graduated from Maryland with a degree they called CMBG for short, which is cell molecular biology and genetics. And I actually had, for 4 summers, an internship at the National Institutes of Health here in Bethesda, worked under a wonderful gentleman, lab chief Dr. Jim Mitchell, who's still there and probably close to retirement, but was so committed to being a mentor to me, very much wanted me to go to medical school. But I was like, that's a long road. The sight of blood makes me queasy. I didn't know what else to do. Patent law was kind of up and coming, and when I ran it by my parents, that was acceptable. I ended up doing well on my LSATs and getting into several good schools. So I went to the University of Pennsylvania at a time when diagnostic testing was becoming, huge. That eventually blew up into the Myriad case, which went to the Supreme Court. But I actually worked on the product of nature doctrine with my externship at the Center for Bioethics. And so I wanted to go into biotechnology at that time, particularly, for therapeutics. At the time it was, chemo and radiation, and now we have individualized treatments, immunotherapy, and that's kind of the area that I'm itching to get back to. But how to end up in patent law was, I didn't really know any other options. Right place, right time. And maybe, as you had said earlier, fate. The universe has my back. I'm just grateful for all of it.
I thought that I would share something that is interesting while you were talking, is that you ran it by your parents about what is being acceptable as a degree to actually pursue. My parents wanted me to go into accounting and business management. I said no. So I ended up with political science and East Asian languages and cultures. That was so interesting because it's not your stereotypical Asian American woman that would actually take that, or I wasn't sure where I think it might be my mentor actually, but although he did want me to go into law and I said no to him too.
I felt for years that I had to prove myself as an attorney. I thought the perception was I went to law school because I wasn't good enough to get into med school. And I wore that label, that probably self-imposed label, for so long. But I do feel like I was looked down upon until I started doing it very well for myself professionally, better than these people that were doctors. And suddenly the culture that I thought was shunning me was sending their kids over to talk to me because I was doing so well, which was kind of a really weird place to be. I will say that when I started working, I was in a practice of a bunch of white men that were in their 50s. I was the only one that didn't have a PhD. They were the most wonderful group of mentors I could have asked for. They always said to me, so what if you don't have a PhD? Right? I think this was at a time, this was in 2002 when I graduated law school, where I think the billable hours maybe weren't quite as intense, and a lot of IP boutiques were getting acquired by general practice law firms. So we were still given a lot of leeway with how we spent our time. And so these folks just really took me under their wing. They took me on examiner interviews to let me sit in their office so we could work on specifications together. I don't know what young attorney gets that level of attention now, but I did not feel that I was disadvantaged by my minority status. I actually felt that I was valued, and I have to give huge props to Venable because they were very much and still are committed to diversity and inclusion.
It's wonderful to hear. I mean, I've definitely experienced some level of discrimination growing up and through different stages of my life. And amazingly, a lot of it, the people that actually supported me and be like my mentors are actually men. And one of the one that I actually have like an annual holiday lunch with him, he's like, Greek. And then he's so amazing in terms of supporting me, but he always challenged me. He would always tell me that if you don't want to hear the truth, don't come to me.
Okay.
And I enjoy that.
You know what you're getting. Yeah.
Yep. And then he was like, if you want me to read your book, you have to be prepared for my feedback. I said, okay. He was like, well, some of the other people, they never was like brave enough. So they never follow up with him. I said, well, I already know what you're going to say. But what was really, really interesting is that I didn't know how much I've grown in years, especially in the last 2 years, because it's not easy to go run a business working with lawyers, supporting with patent practitioner who is actually like a rocket scientist pretty much, right? Depending on the field and the practice, you know, you have like your electrical, you have mechanical, and then you have like the biopharma. And honestly, I am not quite sure how I actually survive because I don't have a PhD. I'm not even in hard science. Right. So I wasn't quite sure how I actually managed to do all of that, other than the fact that I'm curious and I am driven and I'm like very growth oriented. I think I used to be very goal oriented. So I'm like, if I set a goal, I would do it. So the funny story that I want to share with you is that we had a holiday lunch and my mentor was like, would you like to text me and said, organize your thoughts into a presentation and share with me what has gone on like with your company this past year? I'm thinking like, I'm having a holiday lunch with you. Why do you make it seem like work? In my mind. So I was like, and I have so many things going on, and in the past, I would have totally just do it, and I would stay up until 2 or 3 a.m. because I just have to get it done. Because he had an authority figure that tells me to do something, I will do it. And I was like, don't feel like doing it. So I text him back. I was like, don't have time. That's it. Didn't say anymore. Fast forward, we're at lunch. I said it 2 times and he picked that up. He was like, why did you keep mentioning about that you didn't prepare the PowerPoint? Because I said, you asked me to prepare an organized presentation. He goes like, that was a joke. You didn't pick that up? Joke is very culturally based. Not everyone will actually pick up the joke the same way. I think it's very culturally dependent. So I told him, I said, I don't know, it's all Greek to me. So he laughed. And I said that I also want to let you know that it was really a lot of growth for me to actually say no to you in a funny way. And he was like, how so? I said, that's my boundary setting. I basically said no to you instead of being abrupt and said that, no, I don't have time for this. Right. But I just say, don't have time. And he was like, next time I will go back. If I mean for something to be funny, I will put I said, cause I did. So that was actually something that I'm really, really proud of. Because in the past, I don't think that I would have been able to do that. Or I would actually be very, beating myself up why I didn't comply. But now it's like, no. Next question. Can you share a specific experience or milestone in your journey where you felt that there's a profound sense of personal and professional growth, which is leading to our episode on Honor Your Light?
You know, like you, it's not like it's easy to be like, when you look back on your growth, you don't realize that it's happening when it's happening. It's only retroactively. And for me, it's never linear, right? I'm reticent to pinpoint any one thing because we're constantly growing and learning. If I had to, if I was in an exam and I had to, answer this, it would probably be my move to Minnesota. So I went there to go in-house at a startup. It was something totally different, totally beyond what's comfortable, right? My family, they're all government employees. They think I'm bonkers for not taking a safe government job and having a pension and benefits and, going to work for a startup, right? There's no security there. I basically did everything legal. The company was a child spin-off of a parent therapeutic company in France. And so you're basically building the plane as you fly it, and you do what needs to be done. So as someone who's primarily been working in the patent arena, you're writing every single kind of contract imaginable. You're dealing with things like insurance and, IT support and, who's going to plow, right? When you get I moved right the year of the polar vortex. So the personal growth was going to a completely foreign environment. And, you're in the Midwest, it's a different culture too, right? It's very, very cold. I mean, I was practically in Canada. But then also you're at the office and you have no idea what the day is going to bring. And then trying to explain to people afterwards, like, what exactly did you do? And like, I just did whatever fire needed to be put out. And then as we started to hire more people, and then I started to have people underneath me and a team around me, I was really able to step more into my confidence of, okay, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how we're structuring these deals, or this is how we're interacting with the C-suite and the board. And that was the change. That was a period of 5 years, going from just tell me what to do and I'll do it to, okay, no, actually having, like you said, boundaries.
Yes, boundaries so important. I didn't have any before.
We weren't allowed to. And I think that's universal for women, no matter the culture. It can be worse in some, but to any woman. I didn't know I was allowed to have feelings. I was always told I was too sensitive or don't get upset, right? You know, my main job as a child was to go take this plate of food to the men, right? Or wash these dishes, or, you know, be quiet and, you know, make sure you've got powder on your face. And, you know, that it's so incredibly image based. And as a woman, the less space you take up, the more quiet you are, the greater your value is. And I'm speaking to my perception, right? I don't want to put this on anybody else. But there were so many times in my life where I felt it would just be convenient if I were invisible or I could disappear, because I felt my value was so small. My value was in being, you know, not seen or heard. Right. And that might be another conversation for another day, but that's very much a thing.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but for the majority of my life, until very, very recently, I have really worried so much of what other people think of me versus what I think of me.
Right.
And that is so unhealthy.
We spend our lives getting consensus, make sure everyone else around us is approving, but we don't really think about what we want. I don't know if we're taught that matters. I always felt like I was taught that my value is based upon external validation. Am I a good daughter? Am I a good sister? Am I a good wife? Am I a good mother? Right? I had a younger brother. I felt like my sole purpose was taking care of him or doing whatever service my parents needed when they were entertaining. I wasn't allowed to have boundaries. I mean, I did what I was told. And if I asked to do something different, the answer was no. Right?
Yeah, I felt like that, you know, because my dad, passed in 2017. He has mostly been very supportive. But I think that, so as a liberal art, you know, graduate, my parents did not go to college. They were not highly educated, but they have street smart and they work very hard as immigrants, right? Mm-hmm. So immigrants, especially, you know, from their generation, they have the sense of security comes from income and job security and everything. So everything is secondary. Happiness, you did not go to jobs to get happiness. They pay you.
Well, or it's not even a conversation. Like if you have enough to live and you know where your next meal is coming from and you have something in the bank, what does happiness have to do with that? Anything? Happiness is not having to worry where your next meal is coming from. Yep. It's the same thing as Maslow's hierarchy. And so it's very important when we look back on our lives, we recognize that our parents did the very best they could. And they enabled us to be where we are right now because they ensured that our basic needs were taken care of. Like you and I got to go to college, right? My mom got married young, an arranged marriage, came to another country, didn't know the language, didn't know anybody, right? I had the choice. I got to go to school. They wanted me to have an arranged marriage. I married a white guy, right? I mean, that was 20 plus years ago. And so that was when, you know, marrying outside of our culture was accepted, but less common. So my parents, they still let me participate in social gatherings in high school. They were progressive. And I know that I'm speaking with this hindsight bias of, you know, feeling limited growing up, but I certainly don't want to discredit all of the opportunities they gave me because they worked so hard. I was able to, you know, ascend.
I think that is so insightful and so important to recognize because we can't really compare our experiences with our immigrant parents. Like, for example, if it weren't for them or for my grandparents, I was reading one of the articles that I was writing how it all began. And my grandparents actually applied for 10 of us to come to the state. And at the time, it was, you know, he wasn't educated. I was the first person in both maternal and paternal family that went to college. and I'm a girl. So that was huge. The fact that they actually allowed me to do that and actually encouraged me to do that. But I didn't have anyone else before me to set that path or set up as a role model. I had no one to ask questions. I have to figure it out on my own. So which is why it's so important that I have some professors that actually saw things in me and I'm being like, what did you see in me? The confidence was not there. Nowadays we talk about confidence. You gotta be confident showing up. It's really a mindset, not so much a behavior.
So many things are. We believe that our personality, I think that's old thinking that our personality is fixed. It's actually Dr. Joe Dispenza who says, our personality is our personal reality, right? Our thoughts create our beliefs create our actions create our world, right? So if we can change that shift, what if we believed in ourselves? What if we showed up at the table believing we were enough? The message that we would send out to the world and the way the world would interact with us would be completely different. I mean, to me, growing up, the idea of doing something that's my own business, that's crazy talk. That's not secure. And the only way to do it is to just do it. It's to start before you're ready. It's to show up and to trust that the right people, places, and things are going to appear. And you have sought those, right? You have sought mentorship. You've certainly benefited from it, but there's credit to you in being willing and being open, right? And I think that is where some of that, you and I would have think of as a little bit out there, eccentric, from the spiritual side of the universe conspiring to help us. But quite honestly, if we approach the world with that as a possibility, that is where the growth.
What advice would you give to aspiring minority students who are navigating the path in the legal profession but still truly honor their own identity and own light?
So many young people that I have talked to, I teach college courses, and the approach is, what do I want to do with my career? Do I want to do science? Do I want to do law? Do I want to do both? Do I want to do neither? Or my parents want me to do this and I want to do this. But I think the best advice is to be in touch with who you are and what you want. And I think on some levels, we have to choose, right? There's a term, starving artist, for a reason. If you are so passionate about something that you're willing to sacrifice to make it happen, like you're willing to have a day job so you can support your passion at night, great. If school doesn't seem like the right path for you, I mean, for us, it was a foregone conclusion. I mean, I went to Maryland when I only had to pay tuition, and that was like less than $5,000 a year. I know people that are sending their kids to school for $80,000 a year. So I'm perfectly supportive of someone that doesn't want to start out life massively in debt and do something, as an alternative. Your question was directed specifically towards individuals that are navigating the legal field. There are choices to make. What do I want to do after, law school? Do we feel pressured to go to a law firm because we have bills to pay? There's a lot that can be done with a law degree, and it doesn't have to be a law firm. It can be, service, which is a clear one. It can be a completely different career. To some extent, you have to know what lights you up, and then you make the decision of how much risk you're willing to take, which is, do I want to go into that profession where I don't necessarily have a steady paycheck? And decide whose life are you living. If you are living a life that's prescribed by your culture or trying to make your parents happy, are you living your life, or are you living someone else's life? And, from where I sit, there's no judgment. You make your decisions, you own them. Because I spent the first half of my life living it to someone else's expectations. It's only recently that I decided to make a shift. So wherever you are, no judgment, but try to just be in touch with yourself, which is kind of where that phrase honor your light comes from. Like, trust that you have all of the knowledge and the wisdom and the tools within you. And from there, moving from that place will take you in the direction that you're meant to go. It's not going to be easy, but you get to decide and know that you can always readjust. Nothing is permanent. The only way you're going to learn is by making a mistake. No one gets a straight path in life. Life is full of detours, and those detours are the ones that are most meaningful because those are the ones that shape us.
Well, with that, thank you so much for honoring your own light so that we could actually have this particular conversation today. It's such a pleasure, and I can't wait until everyone can witness you honoring your own light.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Kavita.